busting out the only dance move that I have in my repertoire. Welcome back to another episode, my lords, ladies, and gentlemen. First things first, let's get it off my chest. I'm wearing the hat because in the house, all of my doors and windows are open, and it's still wintertime, despite all of the other people I speak to on a day-to-day basis being in virtual tropical climes by comparison. The short version of a very long story: my dog is unwell, and the explosions have been aromatic, shall we say. So,
Ew.
yeah, that's why I am wearing this, because it's keeping my ears warm, and as long as my ears are warm, I am warm. Now, on to today's chat. I am very happy that you guys are all going to get a chance to hear from this lady. To the kind of inside version of this, she's my work wife, right? Love her to death, but we kind of bumped regular heads over critical thinking. You know, like, can you help me with my critical thinking? After one session, I was like, you need no fucking help with your critical thinking whatsoever. None. Hey, this
Oh,
lady is as sharp as she is fierce, and I have nothing but the most respect for her that I can possibly have. In addition to the fact that her name makes her sound like she should be one of the Avengers, or at least a close personal friend of one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Miss Kristen Fury? Yeah. The crowd goes wild. Woo! I think I need some kind of sound effect or something. I,
definitely.
I need something along those lines. I mean, yeah, I didn't really want to be like, so I first stumbled. I wanted the genuine part of our relationship to come across because we've known each other for a while now. Um, but that aside, we on the podcast, that is, have always prided ourselves in being as blunt and as truthful about things as we feel it needs to be. Right, it needs to be like today. A nootropics review went out because people were asking me how do I use them to make myself clever and smarter, and the end result of the review was, well, they don't. You know,
You-
if you want to use them. But the pills don't make you smarter. You do. Yeah.
So, once upon a time, I let somebody convince me to take nootropics because I have ADHD, and they were like, "These will help your brain."
Of course.
No, oh my God, no. Mm-mm. Like, I was jittery. I couldn't focus on anything. It had the absolute adverse effect. I was just like, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm on drugs, and not even the fun ones. Like, no.
The ones where
And they
even
made me like
Scarface would be
sick to
like,
my stomach. Oh yeah. Ugh.
oh no. I mean, anyway, that's kind of stating things that probably didn't need to be said. But that's a story of my life. I often say things that really don't need to be said, or rather shouldn't be said. So on today's discussion, right, sharpness and critical thinking and fury based wizardry aside, um, you are an expert in the field of consent, right? And
Yes.
the operational practices around that. Now, I know for a fact there will be at least four people listening that will be like, consent, isn't that just to do with sex and amorousness and romantic practices? Whereas it does have a prevalence in there, it goes far beyond it. So I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the practices around it and why it's such an important part of, or rather, should be an important part of the way people live.
Definitely. So I have my experience of life, I've been described as a force to be reckoned with. Um,
Agreed.
Essentially, I step into a room, and based on my mood, I can change the entire energy of the space.
I've seen it happen.
And when
It's
you
great.
it's terrifying. Like, sometimes it's frustrating because like I'll just want to walk in and sit down and like hang out with everybody, and
Yeah.
everybody all of a sudden will like stop talking, and I'm like, no, dude, no. Like, that's not what I wanted. But when you step with that kind of energy, you kind of have to ask people's permission to invade their space and like to exist in their realm. And so my consent curriculum started with basic consent, right? Like ask before you touch somebody, sex-based relational stuff, like all of that stuff. Like I've stood on stages and been the keynote speaker at kink conventions about consent and how to negotiate it, because like in those communities there's no firm lines of what you
Oh,
should or
these are
should
the
not
boundaries.
do, right? Like you can do anything that you ask permission for. So like how do you ask permission? How do you step into that space? How do you start the conversation? Because it's awkward.
Yeah.
Um for it's let me rephrase that. It's awkward for men.
I
Women
can
are
see that
very
being
good at
true.
asking for permission to exist. Well, like societally,
Mm,
we are not allowed to exist without men's permission.
which is
Uh,
gross.
it's fucking disgusting. But like we don't pretend, we don't live in a world, but you and I don't live in a world where we pretend like the real world doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So like that's just how it is. So I started
Mm,
teaching men how to ask for permission to exist in women's space. That's where it started. It was like a women's empowerment thing and a self-empowerment thing.
fair enough.
And then I realized that like it started to ripple and it just made existing with people more accommodating for me because I have autism. So
Okay.
when you abruptly invade my space, like it's very unsettling and will fuck my entire day. Uh, I had to start teaching people how to interact with me. And
Yeah.
then I was like, wait, if I enjoy being interacted with this, like this, other people might enjoy it too.
Hell yeah.
So that's where it
Love
started,
that.
was just like me accommodating myself.
You find that that's the thing with a lot of um, cognitive skills, right? Because and please correct me if I'm wrong. The notion of approaching the topic of consent still very much starts in your head, right? Which then informs your physical approach, how you converse, blah blah blah. This type of thing. So you find that, well, at least it's been my experience that one finds that the easiest way to gain some kind of competence with cerebral practices and cognitive skills of that nature is to point the microscope towards yourself, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, one of the things that I know keeps coming up a lot for the folks in my field, working in the world of observation, right? We notice a shoe or a piece of jewelry or a wry comment or a tattoo or a funny hat or whatever it is, and then somebody formulates a hypothesis, a story about it. But the making or breaking of whether it's accurate or not is going to find out, right? Is going to
Mhm.
find out. So, in order to try and allay people's fears around that, or at least provide some more information. Because me, I don't care. I'll like I'm not concerned about the approach. If they tell me to fuck off, I will. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not just gonna stay there. How is that situation best tackled from a consent based point of view? Because the concept is we are seeing things about other people that they're doing their best to keep secret for whatever
Mhm.
reason, whether rightly or wrongly. But it's the broaching of that topic of information. Is there any pearls you can share in that area?
So I love to play. It's a My approach is going to be different based on what my goal is. So what my goal and my end goal for the interaction, and I am an incredibly calculated person. So by the time I sit down to have a conversation with somebody about anything, whether it's the read I'm getting on them or just to check in to see how they are doing, because like I'm one of those people where like if you walk into my space and something's clearly wrong with you, I'm the person that will go over and be like, "Hey, friend, you need a hug." Like,
Yeah.
but when you're as trained as we are, and it's almost Observing people almost feels rude at the point
Yes.
where I'm at in life, right? Like I'm
Mm.
just like, oh, you didn't want anybody to notice that. And I notice
Sorry.
all of the things. Like, oh yeah. So I've just gotten to the point where I literally will walk up to people and be like, hey, can we have a conversation about what I just observed? Please. Like, or I will get up and walk away because I'm the person that bubbles out of me. Like I need to say something.
Gotcha.
So I ask permission first.
I love that. Let's put it out on the table because a lot of these fears around this seem to come up from like the stories people are making up in their heads. What if they think I'm weird? What if they think I'm this? What if they think I'm this? What if they think I'm stupid? What if they think I'm wrong? Etc. 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 Ad infinitum. But saying can we just have a conversation about that?
Okay.
Like
Well, and
the
in my
go on.
experience, people love talking about themselves. So, like, it's an invitation. It's not even requesting permission. It's, hey, can we sit down and talk about where you're at in life and how you're experiencing it and how that experience is being expressed? Because, like, whoo,
Have you found then that there's been any kind of cross cultural differences with the way that people like to talk about themselves, like between an American person or an English person or a European or a whoever person? Are there any kind of differences that you've noticed in that area? And I feel that there might be.
yes. So our team is half European and half American. And for the European folks, you're also polite, like even you. Like I have to coax it out of you to get you to start talking. Like other people, I can be like, oh, here's a button, and then I can just sit back and stop talking for like an hour. Right? But you guys, it's like, okay, Mr. Cardall, how's your day going? What have you been up to? What'd
Yeah.
you do this weekend? And it's like you got to dig because for whatever reason.
Well, I feel like I'm under the microscope now again. I need like a massive light to shine in my eyes and probably less waterboarding gear around me than I should have. I mean, I don't have any. I'm only kidding.
That's definitely not a hobby or interest you have. Who would ever want to
No,
be waterboarded?
not at all. Not at all. I mean, that's something to consider. Then is the cultural background of the person, is the stories that you're making up about the interaction that you haven't even had at that particular time. Have you found that there have been any kind of particular situational markers to broach the concepts of talking about consent? Like, is it just as fine to do it in a bus queue as it is at a restaurant, as it is walking through the park, or what are the differences there?
Part of my mission is to make consent a part of everyday conversation.
Cool.
So I have conversations about consent in places where people can listen and are listening, and I do it simply slightly louder than I would have a conversation that I'm trying not to be overheard. So I make it super obvious that I'm trying to be overheard, and then I will drop like lore nuggets about whatever it is that essentially make it to where people can't help themselves and they come up and talk to me.
Gotcha.
It's a trap.
Gotcha.
It's a great trap.
But it's not a nefarious trap. It is a trap that they are free to
No,
leave from at any time.
absolutely. I am 5 foot nothing. I can hold nobody where they don't want to be.
I mean, for what you might lack in actual height, you definitely make up for in size of personality. Believe me. The fury. Um, so, what would you say then are some of the benefits to making consent a part of everyday conversation? Like, it's a wonderful goal, and I understand it, but I've known you behind the scenes for ages. So, what to somebody who maybe isn't as familiar with the topic? What is the benefits of that?
So what it has evolved into is wanting to encourage people to connect in genuine ways that feel good for themselves and like for everybody involved, right? Where it started was baseline consent, just like consent about things like sex.
Gotcha.
Um, but when you take when you take a person and invite them to exist within their realms of comfort, right?
Mm,
And you're not forcing them to push into edges or to lean into changing things or whatnot. You get to know them on just a very genuine level, and they feel safe to do so because you're
mm,
not forcing them to do anything.
gotcha.
So the interactions that you start having are very different when people
Gotcha.
don't feel like they're being held at gunpoint in your conversation.
Christ, and Lord knows, right? It's about to be a sort of an old man ranty comment at the minute, but particularly the society we live in the Western world. I don't live in the Eastern world, so I have no idea what goes on there. Primarily in terms of the discussions, seeing some of the Red Book reels and stuff, seems like they're having a great time. But we could use a little bit more. We could use a little bit more conversation that's connection first, as opposed to just loud noise and emotion. Something that's based primarily on let me listen. Let me open the gates for you to step in a little bit more. Maybe that would connect to reason and understanding and compassion. Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Let me call you back to something that you mentioned earlier because it's kind of popped into my head because one of the benefits of being me, and there isn't many, is I'll remember pretty much every conversation I've ever had. Right, that's one of the benefits of it, and so I'm immediately called to times where you've heard the kind of old man, what's the point of this? And I'm kind of prefacing when you get to the question, you'll understand why I'm mentioning this first. The old man kind of going, what's the point of this? This is nonsensical stuff. Right down to somebody else that's going, well, just answer the question and we'll just get on with life. Who cares? Um, are there some roles that exist in life that have the consent implied within that? Like there was a very popular video that kind of inspired these conversations that I saw of people sitting in a barber's, hairdressers, whatever you want to call it, and then the barber or the hairdresser would say, "Can I touch you?" or "Is it okay if I touch you?" And the argument kind of boiled down to, well, I wouldn't have sat in the chair if I didn't want you to do that, right? That's the kind that was the kind of argument. So, where I don't really know how to phrase the question. Are there any implied notions of consent that are within the role of like a barber, dentist, whatever, or is it implied contextually? Is it ever implied? Should it always be explicit? That kind of a thing. Hopefully, you know what I mean.
So I think that implicit consent can be built through rapport, but the reasoning behind that can actually be pulled off of your example. Do you know why barbers ask permission before they touch you?
No idea. I mean, look at me. I don't really go to the barbers anymore.
Be unfair. Be unfair. So mobsters and gangsters and everybody who's ever run the crime underworld do a lot of their business out of barbershops, like back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Al Capone, right? Al Capone
yeah,
and his
yeah.
barber.
Mm.
So when you are working with somebody who is in situations like Al Capone is in, you don't want to touch that man without permission because if you don't ask him first, at least give him warning that you're touching him, chances are you're going to get shot. And it's going to be
Ah,
impulsive. Like he's not even, his brain's not going to slow down enough.
we love it.
He's just going to be like, somebody's touching me from behind, so I'm going to fucking kill you before you kill me.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I'm starting to think if like Sweeney Todd would have had a problem if he'd have just asked people first before he cut their throats.
I mean,
Uh,
if he was just Sweeney Todd just existed in the wrong era, because if he existed during millennial time, like half of the millennials on the planet would rather be dead than alive anyways. So he would have gotten volunteers. He wouldn't have had to hunt people down.
Curiosity.
Right? Like, So many people that are just like, I don't want to be alive anymore, but I don't really want to do the killing of myself. Can I find
Yeah.
somebody else to do
I
it?
want to go out to a Victorian musical and live in a pie. That's exactly what I want.
Right?
I mean, this kind of connects to observational practices with the notion of rapport and how do you know when you're in rapport and all that, or how do you operate when you believe you've achieved rapport? What are the differences? What are the signs that exist within that? So, what are some of the things that you've seen that let you know that rapport has been developed enough that some implied consensual things can just be spoken about, and others need to be addressed?
So I will ask for permission to stop asking for permission. I'll just be like, hey, I've noticed that like this is something like I have friends that I hug every time at the end of our interaction, right? And in the beginning it was, do you want a hug? Can I give you a hug? Right? And now like 4 years later, it's just like, no. We've been hugging for so long, you'll tell me if you don't want to hug. But that there usually is a conversation at some point in time where it's just like,
Gotcha.
hey, we're touchy-feely people and we've been hanging out long enough. Like, can we just do this in flow thing? And you'll let me know where that when there's a boundary or when there's a day where you don't have the capacity to be touched because consent changes based off of like how resourced you are. Like I
Mm.
am way more warm and welcoming when I've gotten a whole lot of sleep than when I'm sleep deprived. If I'm sleep deprived, I ask people not to touch me, and that's more for like their safety than anything else because like I bite. Like, I'm just like, don't, it's not gonna work out nicely. Leave me alone.
Yeah. See, just as a kind of statement, this is why the whole notion of the the boring, narrow-minded old men of why do we need to talk about, well, what's wrong with having a more open conversation with it doesn't have to be all fruity and la-di-da. Like for that topic, I with the people I have relationships with, I love being tactile and hugging and that type of thing. But if I don't know you or don't know you very well, if you open your arms out to me, I'm going to walk away from you because I don't like that. I don't like it. And the few people, yourself and a few others that I've had conversations about that with, just to allay those properties, I never have to think about that again. Never have to think about that again. There was a guy on the course we were on together, Sean, who must have heard it and asked. He asked, and we were getting on like a house on fire anyway. I was like, bring it in,
And he
bring
gives
it
the
in.
best hugs. Sean
He,
Sean Breffo gives the best freaking hugs. Oh my god.
like honestly, I thought I gave a good hug. That man,
Ugh.
top notch, top notch. That brings me to this, right? Um, Humans, in their infinite wisdom, Lord knows I'm not a fan of being one, but they are very pro. They are. I say they like I'm not one. We we are very prone to change, to volatility, to things that happen from a lack of sleep, or around that. So, what's been your experience around the kind of everyday consensual conversations that you have the pattern, and you might have asked the question around not asking the questions anymore, and you've seen change around that. There's been an anomaly to the pattern that you've developed. What are some of the causes that you've experienced, or things that you've seen in their movement or conversation or whatever it is?
So like I have to be very aware of the hat that I'm wearing when I enter into conversations because I exist in lots of environments where I'm actually the authority.
Nice.
So people will want to say yes simply because they think that I'll be upset if they say no. Like society doesn't really tell people that they have the option and that it's a safe thing to say no. And like, so I always try to like, I will preface things. You've seen me do it where I'll look at somebody and be like, can I ask you a question? And it's okay to say no. Like
Yeah.
I jump right in before you can even be like, and be like, you don't have to, you can, it's
Yeah.
fine. Like,
I, I think it's such a I don't know what the best, like an underrated skill to have, especially if it is that you're in the business of learning about people and groups and roles and businesses in ways that they feel that information is protected. To hold that mirror back up to somebody, regardless of whether it's a therapy, a case, a friend, whatever, just to go, here is what I'm seeing, and the reasons why you're not seeing it are this. That whole raw aspect of the relationship, that it's handled with care and conversation is such a wonderful thing. What's been your experience of people that are just flat out against it in their reasons why?
that are flat out against conversations about consent.
Conversations about consent, just the everyday stuff, like the bottle. I wouldn't have sat in the chair if I didn't want to, or why are you coming over to me and talking to me about this? Why are you asking me for that type of put? It's
Mm.
my experience has very much been generational. It's very much been a generational element, but I'm wondering if there is any understanding that we can glean from that for use in our conversations, our interactions moving forward.
I mean, okay, so if somebody is paying me, meaning they're a client of mine, meaning that by the end of our 10 sessions or our 12 sessions or our year that we spend together, I don't care how old you are, you're going to be operating on a consent-based basis simply because you've spent the time with me. And if I'm a client of mine and you're paying me to be around you, you can't.
Let me just jump in, Kristen. If I don't know if you can hear me, mate, you've frozen.
Oh no!
I can kind of hear you robotically, but your face is frozen.
Let me.
Oh, you're back! Yeah, you're back.
Oh, yay. Hold on. I was about to say I'm gonna just close the window. I think I'm putting too much pressure on my operating system. As
Your computer or your
my
brain, or
coworkers
both.
would, as my emotional. Ugh,
Oh, you're frozen again now, by the way.
I'm gonna touch it.
Uh,
No,
I,
hold
as your
on.
sound is coming in and out, I'm just going to say, on the off chance you can hear me, I'm just going to stay here until you jump back into it. Oh, you're back! Yeah, there we go! Yay!
Right?
Perfect.
So like I had to close my emotional support tabs. They were putting too much freaking pressure on my operating system or on my internet. Like, ugh. Which is
You do
sad
live in the
because now
desert.
I'm gonna have to like go and hunt them. I do. Uh,
So it's
uh,
up to you, mate. Do you want to just pick up from where you left off, or start the explanation again, or up to you? I can make it work edit wise wherever you want.
as far as the like it got we I started talking about why. Okay,
Like
so if you
if
were my
people are
client,
paying you and you're going to be working in a consent based property over time, and
like I'll take the time to teach you if you're paying me or if I have to be around you, right? And that is actually, and then if you if you can't operate within consent and you're not paying me and I don't have like a really strong motivation to be around you, I don't end up around you because statistically speaking, we're going to end up in a situation where one of us is going to need bail money. And that's oh god.
a
Old white
can
men are the worst
open
about
worms
old
everywhere.
white men are the worst about it. Like, and that's the thing. Like, there's so many people that I've like had to look at them and be like, I'm gonna get up from this conversation because you're pushing buttons and healed Kristen is only so thick. And you're about to hit a hood rat, Kristen, and I don't think you want to like you're playing the game of fuck around and find out.
Yeah, you're about to find out real soon.
Right. And like there was the situation with the guy that decided to use a firearm off of a bike and take out a healthcare professional. our health and insurance CEO, right?
Yeah, I
And
believe
we
he's
were
known
having
as
a
the adjuster now.
conversation, right? So we were having a conversation around a table, and I sit at tables where fascinating conversations happen. But so we're sitting there and everybody's like debating whether or not he was right. And I was like, you guys need to all stop and think of, like, we need to start at one point. And the point that we need to start at is reminding everybody that violence is always an option. Like, it's not always the option, it's not always the best option, but it's always an option.
Mm.
And that was a reminder of that. And I love it. And for the first time, like, American gun laws finally did something for our health program.
I mean, it's sad that it took something like that, but
I mean, when your job is fucking over people and making sure they die by denying their claims and stuff, like, the fact that he
yeah,
got to live so long in that role is shocking and disappointing. And it happens to be like during like a civil rights holiday. It was MLK Day
okay.
that we were talking about it, because we were talking about it the next day. And I looked at my friend and like, as we were finishing the conversation, I was like, if Malcolm X had been the face of our civil rights movement,
Yeah.
acts like this wouldn't be surprising. That's why the government didn't let him speak.
I was only talking to a friend of mine earlier. You know Jim, right? I've told you about. Have you met Jim? Ah, it doesn't matter. I was talking to Jim earlier. Um, about this whole notion of politics, and yes, there are divisions drawn in between red states and blue states, and over here the kind of red blue is inverted because the blues are the conservatives, and or most places have a two-party system, whatever it is. But if you look at the fact that one of the bases for a political role is deception, like that's one of the bases. Like, how can you ever achieve a consent based because I am sticking to the topic with this. How can you ever achieve a consent based interaction with your constituents or with an area or with a country, whatever it is, if you are acting in such a way where deception is definitively on the table, everyone can see it, like the proverbial elephant shit in the room, you know, and then just
So
to not address it. Go on.
I can only speak to American politics
Yeah,
because I live in America.
of course.
And what I will tell you is that both sides of the aisle are the two sides of the same coin, and the person who loses every election is the American people. No matter who wins, we lose.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and we will never have consent in politics, because that would require politicians to care. And they don't. They're so far removed from their constituents because of their back alley deals and their freaking
Uh,
money. And the line, they literally, the White House is American property, and there is fence lines that go all the way around it and are 10 feet out. We're not even allowed to like observe the White House because the people who work there are so freaking crooked. They know they're going to get shot if somebody spends too much time standing in front.
oh dear, it's crackers
And
and
like, oh, it's awful.
uh-oh, can open, worms everywhere.
Well, critically thinking based, right? If you follow the money, you figure out how everybody's garbage.
I've always said, like, not necessarily specific to garbage, but I've always said, if you understand how somebody spends their money, just that one concept alone, direct personal behavioral, emotional, psychological, spiritual motivation into how they are choosing to live their lives. Like, if I choose to buy myself a packet of cookies over a salad, that, I mean, that tells you a lot about me in that particular moment. FYI, I don't always do that. do sometimes, but I don't always do that. But yeah, this is the notion of consent on a much more grander scale, out of kind of one to one or group based interactions. It's consent from politician to constituents. It's consent from country to country. It's consent from coaches to coachees. I'm not even sure
Mhm.
what the right word the other side of that is. The opening parts of this relational paradigm, anywhere you go, need to be nurtured. Whether
Mhm.
whether you're doing it secretively, tactically, whatever your means of motivation is. So I got a challenge for you in the last. It'll be a fun challenge. It's not like I'm going to say let's go and I don't know deadlift £1,000.
Ooh, give
not
me
not that
about a
kind of.
year. Like, give me about a year, because like I'm starting my lifting journey again, right? So give me about a
Oh,
year,
nice.
and
Okay.
we'll deadlift.
Okay, nice. I just meant wasn't that kind of a challenge? I didn't want to. I don't want. I don't need to deadlift £1,000. I don't. Um. So if
I
you were
want to.
going to, if, we'll make it happen. If we'll make it happen. If you were going to sum up the mechanicry of consent, like as in, is it just the understanding of conversation or human behavior or Alabama? She's going to work. My actual wife. or
Nay.
she can't hear you. I've got my headphones in. Um,
Oh.
like, what are the elements that go into making it work? And if this is like kind of part two for the challenge, and if you could be like, once the consent base has been achieved, like, so what? Like, what are the relational benefits of it? You know?
So in my friend group, oh, what happened? All right, it disappeared real quick. But
We're
in my
still here.
friend group, I get away with not literal murder, but with murder. With just about anything. I know the people that I can instantly like wrap myself around and be like, we're gonna cuddle for the next, couple hours or whatever. Or I'm the friend that'll sit down at the parties. I'm great. It's great. And ask if we can play the questions game. And I will essentially gather all of the data points that I need during that, and then I'll provide you with your psychological profile that usually includes a series of diagnoses from the DSM-5. And I'll tell you to go and talk to your like if there's like a flag for actual warning, I'll be like, you should talk, you should seek mental health help, please.
Yeah,
Like, right? And that's my superpower. But I
love it.
can do that amongst my friends because I've known them all for the base group for over a decade. And I always ask permission. Like
Mm.
everybody knows that I'm essentially a human freaking lie detector. And I'm polite and I don't call people on their bullshit unless we're in a situation where I've got permission to do so. Um,
I just want to say I can attest to that because I've seen it. So just to kind of put that out there. I mean, so what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the if I were to put like consent on a bumper sticker, because they do their best to some grandiose things up in a really succinct way. It's pure connection, and I don't want that to sound anything ethereal or emotive, but like think of what happens in your life anywhere through a purity of connection, whether that be with a friend, a wife, a husband, a lover, whatever, business partner, colleague, the list goes on. The areas of informational insight that are achieved purely from consent is huge. Is that be right? I love it.
absolutely.
I love it. Like the and I mean you will know as well from how much we spoke. There's things that I'm not allowed to talk about on air, but the houses and places that I've been into, rather than walking in room X to have a look around, just to go, is it okay? if I go in there to have a quick poke around? And the yes or no talk it speaks volumes in that particular action. It's like if actions were ever to actually speak louder than words, achieving consent for whatever it is that you're working on, whether it is confirmation of a deduction or not, is behaviorally monumental. Love it, love it. What are your closing? Give me a Jerry Springer's final thoughts esque on consent. What's the
Oh,
notion you want to leave people with?
consent-based communication provides you with a foundation of trust and will let you push the boundaries because you create in yourself and present yourself as a safe space. Being somebody who receives the word no instantly as far as human connection and like in from my book, like valuable personhood, having I mean
Don't worry about it.
having these skill sets to receive no with grace makes it to where you'll receive yes much faster.
That's killer. That needs its own fucking bumper sticker. Right?
Smoke will
And
say, let's put it on a t-shirt.
let's put it on a t-shirt, you know? I got my own on here. So let's put that one on a
Oh,
t-shirt. It's great. And one of the things as well that I want people to understand is just because we talk about it here and you talk about it and whoever it is that talks about the notion of consent as an explicit conversational element, do not misunderstand for a second that it can't be done tactically, right?
oh,
Because it 100% can, and if it is that you guys want to hear more of that, if you're very very good and if you ask nicely, I'll bring Kristen back to talk about that at a later stage. But for now, Kristen, if people have gotten things out of our discussion, where can they hear more of your pearls of wisdom, or tune in to your downloads of? I don't know. I'm making up words now at the minute. Where can people hear more
I
from you?
wanna I wanna expand and close your loop real quick. The other thing is if you ever are put in a situation where you need to make somebody look like an asshole, asking their consent and like having it be for the dumbest things is where you start, and then you can just spiral and you get them going and you can destroy somebody just by asking questions.
Hundred
And you
percent.
don't even need the answers. Like half the time I'll be like, can I ask a question? And I'll be like, and I don't need you to answer this. I just want you to sit with it. And especially if they're being an asshole, like in a
Yeah.
group of people, I'm like, I'm going to make it. I am the 5 foot nothing bitch who's about to destroy you with 5 questions.
It's the perception
And
of
I'm going to
power.
ask
I
your
love it.
permission to do it.
That's what I mean. I love it. I love it.
But you can
Naughtiness.
reach me on Facebook. My name is Kristen Fury. You can reach me at my email. My company is wonderful. We do great coaching. So that's kfury at avantiexecutive.com. And I'm on Instagram, kristen.m.fury.
And you guys don't have to remember that. You should be remembering it by now because you're all deductionist wizards. But I will put it in the information for this episode when it goes out. From me personally, mate, getting the chance to chat to you is always a pleasure. But the fact that we can focus on talking shop as well and let everyone have a peek behind the curtain at the same time is glorious. So to you guys who are listening, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, I can wait if you want to just do that now. Just kidding. I have no idea if you're actually going to do it or not. It helps these podcasts keep going. It's kind of become trite and cliche in the 21st century to go, please subscribe. If
The
you don't want to,
knowledge that this man
don't.
gives you, the knowledge that this man gives you, subscribe, it's free.
I appreciate that, mate. Thank you. But yeah, so with that in mind, guys, if you enjoyed it, you know where to find us. And it helps when you join in on these conversations as well. Not, yes, it boosts the algorithm and all that stuff, but we want to talk to you. We want to get as much face to face or comment to comment, virtual face to virtual face, whatever, as we actually can on anything that we're talking about from any podcast. So with that in mind, I am going to love you and leave you, and I will see you next time for another episode.